But so there's no confusion, I want to make it clear that I really enjoyed this episode. Definitely one of the best what ifs. And I was right, and I think many of you felt it was going to be the same what if. Well, they boiled it down to what if Ultron had won, which included getting the Vision body. James Spader and Paul Bettany's body. Maybe that's why he didn't do it. Yes, I love this episode, but something that horribly undercuts it is they didn't bring back James Spader to voice Ultron. Maybe, Ross Marquand does a fabulous job as Red Skull, but his Ultron leaves so much to be desired that I suspect that's why a character who originally loved to monologue is now suspiciously reticent. He's like, you know what? Let my actions speak for me. And they said a lot this episode, but I would have liked, it so clearly wasn't James Spader. Now, Marvel, they haven't admitted it, but it's pretty clear that in some cases they don't want to pay the salaries. Dave Bautista, Dave Bautista is the only one who spoke up. Although I'm starting to really like Lake Bell's Black Widow. I think she's doing an excellent job. But anyway, I would have said, I think it's so important to have James Spader here that I would have said, what's it going to take? I mean, I would have paid him. I think the threshold for what I think Marvel should have paid him to do this should have been pretty high. And then if he still didn't do it, I would let everyone know that he either wanted way too much money or he passed, and then let the fans eat him alive. Because I think, again, as I said, it undercut the power of the episode. But it was still so good because there were so many other goodies. So let's dive in. All right, so we started out with this so many good action sequences here. And who's our dynamic duo for this episode? Why, it's Black Widow and Hawkeye, who we never really got to see work together in live action. So many promises were made about Budapest. Nothing. So that was a little frustrating, but at least we got to see them here. I liked her getting her Captain America on. She has the motorcycle. I mean, she's driven a motorcycle herself in the film, so that's really that's really much from the Captain America universe. And Black Widow for a while was a part of his instead of having her own. And I like that she gets a shield too. That was a great use of the Red Guardian shield. I mean, why didn't the live action movies think of that? Maybe because fans would have been upset, which is too bad, because why can't they both have a shield? One's clearly Red Guardians. She doesn't have super soldier serum now, so I don't know how she's hopping around like she is here, but who cares? And, they do, I like that they have the different looks. They have her Age of Ultron look here mixed with Clint looking like Avengers Endgame, because they referenced so many movies in this episode. It was really a lot of fun. But yeah, I think that I can understand the importance of a female character sacrificing herself for the good of the mission and not for a loved one, which was usually the case when it comes to female characters. But I don't know. I think Black Widow had a lot more to give. Partially because it took them so long to get started with her. But, I mean, look what they've done with her in the animated episodes alone. So maybe Florence Pugh's Yelena can take the baton from the electrified baton from here. Make sure you grab the right end, Yelena. All right, so I don't know why everybody's so dirty in the future. There's no soap. So I thought this was great. This was a great sequence. So, great chase sequence with these Ultron minions chasing them. I love how Clint, I didn't even notice he had a metal arm, Bucky style. I guess in this reality, he's the one who got a metal arm. I didn't even realize he had one until it got ripped off. But what I was paying attention to when I first saw this episode was the rapid fire of the arrows, that he put all of them up there and was able to just work his way down the line. I was like, that is a nice trick. The way I've never gotten the appeal of archers before. Whenever an archery movie comes out, everyone's like, oh, there's reports that everyone's taken up archery. I'm like, that seems very difficult to me. Very heavy labor. I don't really feel a lot of payoff. But you know what? This episode, I was like, there's something to this being an archer. So anyway, great, motorcycle cutting back and forth. She really can drive that thing. And I love the way Clint was taking them out. Those arrows were landing with a lot of force. So it takes them all out. Then they're like, we gotta take out that aerial combatant. So they go up there. I don't know where he got a cloak of invisibility from. I looked it up. I didn't see anything in the Marvel background to where that could come from. But he sticks his little metal arm out there, metal on metal violence, and he's stabbing them with the arrows. And it was fantastic. It was great. Down at the bottom, she's using her electrified batons, and they animated really well Black Widow's style of fighting. So it felt very much like the character, which I thought was so cool. And then his arm's been ripped off, and then I was like, oh, what? A lot of bloodless violence in this episode. Wait till we get to Thanos, which annoyed me, which we'll discuss. So anyway, they're about to take him down after pushing him off a building. I don't know how he survived that. It's fine. And then she's like, motorcycle in your face. And I was like, great use of the motorcycle. And I love their banter. Again, I'm so glad that he's teaming up with Kate Bishop for his series, but again, we were promised, Hawkeye and Black Widow adventures. We got a little taste of it in Endgame, but then it was just salty from tears. All right, so they have a funny gag about give you a hand, and she's like, oh, I wouldn't make that joke, but she totally did. Lake Bell is very funny. Her Poison Ivy is also fantastic deadpan. So it's revealed they're in Russia, hence all the snow, and they're back at the Kremlin, baby. And they had some great lines in this episode. Too many movie references, which we'll talk about when we get to them. One too many. Not everyone can reference movies, and that's Spider-Man's thing. MCU Spider-Man's thing. But anyway, she says, Russia, secrets were the national pastime. And I'm like, well, that's pretty good stuff. I like it. Again, so much better than the Black Widow movie. The Black Widow movie had potential. I liked some of the things that were in it, to be fair. But boy, when you see stuff like this, you're like, you fell short by so much. All right, so they're like, in this universe, Ultron upload complete, and he got into his vision body. And again, maybe James Spader was like, you want me to walk around in Paul Bettany's body? And I'm like, in your defense, James Spader, the animation got a little sloppy here, and it doesn't look too much like Paul Bettany either. If he can make a cape out of nothing, he can rearrange his face a little bit and look like James Spader. We can come up with something. All right, so he's very powerful, though, and it clearly seems to have a lot more ideas for how to use that Mind Stone than Vision ever thought of. So he's able to go. So we can see them reworking Age of Ultron. So Clint and Nat are in the Avengers Quinjet trying to stop a nuclear launch, and here we are at the Nexus Internet Hub, which was referenced in an Age of Ultron when they were trying to stop Ultron from getting the nuclear codes. But he's taken out all the Avengers because he's got. He actually doesn't have the Infinity Stones yet. Vision is a formidable opponent. I feel somehow they could have beat him. I don't know why this Vision is so much more powerful. He's getting slapped around everywhere else in the MCU. All right, so anyway, it's not even White Vision. So anyway, he lets off a big blast from the Mind Stone, and he not only kills Tony Stark, but he takes over the machines and is able to launch all the nuclear weapons. Gets all Doctor Strangelove in here. And then we can see General Ross, who doesn't say anything because William Hurt, they didn't want to pay for him. Although, why can't they have the fake guy that they were using for the rest of the episodes be like, oh my God, let me call Bruce Banner or Betty and apologize. All right, so I thought this was more powerful, though. The Quinjet sees all of these nukes falling down, and I love the reactions. And Clint being like, saying his wife's name, and they're like, we're too late. They seem to be like the only humans left on Earth at some point. I don't know what happened to everyone else. Most of them would be gone. All right, so anyway, Ultron is won. And I like that he's standing, by the way, it's revealed on the Avengers terrace. So he's standing there and he's like, he's getting all philosophical. And he's like, what to do now? I don't want to start reading. All right, so they don't have, he's watched everything on Netflix because he's Ultron. All right, so who shows up? Thanos, same way he does in the live action movies because he's collecting Infinity Stones and he wants the one smack in the middle of Vision's head, just like last time. Although this time, immediately, after seeing the gauntlet, Vision just uses the Mind Stones and cuts him in half. And I honestly, when I watched that, I was like, that was an option? Like, Vision got killed twice. Remember? Because the Time Stone, Thanos rewound. Why didn't he just cut him in half? And then it was a bloodless. Thankfully, he cauterized the wound because that's pretty hardcore for Disney Plus, I gotta say. So he flops apart, and they had some pretty good sound effects. And then Vision gets all Beast transformation in Beauty and the Beast, the animated movie, and he puts himself in some armor. It's very pretty light show. I do love the rainbow colors. They're so fun. They make it feel so much like a Saturday morning cartoon. And he powers up. And he's like, let's get to business. So he brings back all of his minions. I love these Ultron soldiers. As I said, a variation of them is going to be showing up in live action. We'll see what the circumstances are, but I believe they have a different ruler when we're going to see them, but they're cool looking. I love them. I can't wait to see them in live action. So just like Vision, he makes himself a cape, but he just has delusions of grandeur because he didn't see Thor, at least not right now. And I actually predicted that, as some of you remembered. I really appreciated that. I made a joke that he would have cape envy from Thor, and he did. All right, so anyway, I like this shot. Apparently he's a fan of anime too. He and Killmonger should have been friends. So he gets all anime and he's like, I'm gonna take over. I don't know why he needed the Infinity Stones to know there was other stuff in space. I mean, anybody could figure that out. I thought that the Infinity Stones would be what it took to figure out there were multiverses, but he's like, other planets? What? All right, so he goes, or other realms, but I mean, come on, where did he think Thor was from? So he goes to Asgard, and I liked this shot, by the way. It's right out of Prometheus, to the point where I'm like, oh, you kind of ripped Prometheus off. But since Prometheus didn't really do anything with it, we'll allow it. That was great. I love that. I love Michael Fassbender in those movies. So anyway, then he goes to the Sovereign, we're Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're fighting. We're like, hey, Gamora, where have you been? We were promised some Gamora. Maybe she'll show up next episode. Maybe she's one of the 2 that got cut for the next season. So then he goes to Sakaar, and this shot of Jeff Goldblum made me actually feel very bad. I mean, he really was running like a fight club where the participants often were fighting against their will, but I still felt bad for him here. All right, Jeff Goldblum, what an actor, even in animation. Also didn't say anything, because he was in the room. You can't say like, oh no, or something. That here, Ego, there are 2 things I thought about this. First off, I loved the red swarm that would take over the planets. That was a cool idea, representing just that many of Ultron's robots. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. But I was like, where's Kurt Russell? Remember at the end of the earlier What If episode, Ego showed up to get Peter Quill? Like, where is he? His planet gets destroyed. So I'll be curious to see if that gets resolved. Then Xandar shows up at Xandar where the Nova Corps is. He's opening fire, but he gets taken out. At first I wasn't sure what hit him, and I actually thought that this blast shot him into the ground, but actually it's just a blast, and Carol Danvers stays up there, and look at that explosion. Oh, that's beautiful. I love how powerful Carol Danvers is in these animated What If episodes. I sure hope that in the Marvels, she was pretty powerful in her movie, and she was so cool in Avengers Endgame, but this is like next level. I really hope to see this in the next movie. All right, so anyway, she has her own little banter, and she says, I already saw an evil, she says, hey, Skynet, I already saw an evil robot movie, and it doesn't need a sequel. And I was like, that's pretty good. And of course, it's her dated references, which I think are funny. Although Peter Quill had kind of a similar situation because he left Earth in the 80s. Whatever, anyway, don't repeat yourself, Marvel. They're like, we do so much, sometimes we forget. And I like he looks over his shoulder and he's like, what the? And I love that you can see his face underneath his helmet. So he makes him look a little vulnerable under there, but that's deceiving. So Carol thinks she can take him, and I love this. This was so great. She pushes him into the planet towards the core. And the animation of this was amazing. I was like, wow, Carol, you are super cool. I mean, this is great. If I were Brie Larson, I would take these stills and go into Kevin Feige's office and I'd say, I'd like to order this, please. I hope she doesn't get what I ordered in the mail and what actually showed up situation. So anyway, pushes him into the center of the earth. They're fighting in the magma. I thought that was great too. And look, she's like almost gonna get him. She's like powering up. She's cracking his skull. And he's like, you're spirited. He's like super mean. But the lines don't quite land from Ultron because you're like, it's not James Spader. So anyway, he actually pulls her hands off and explodes, killing her and several of the planets around them. So I have to tell you, I think that this Ultron is not a fun villain because he's too powerful. You're like, you can't defeat him. It's impossible. And also, his goal is too absolute. He's like, I just want to end the show and end the movie. And you're like, well, then what? Like, this is like, it's too serious. I mean, I guess that's like realistic maybe, but from a story perspective, I think it has some problems. Although I guess it's such a horrible threat that, of course, they have that big reveal at the end, which we're getting to. So he's adrift in space, and he's like, I've done it. I've silenced the entire universe. But he's leveled up. And we have our second person after Doctor Strange Supreme who hears the Watcher. I don't know when he said who said that. I don't know why the Watcher kept talking. And so I love this. The Watcher, I love Jeffrey Wright getting a little like silly with these lines. And he goes, what the hell is this? And I thought that was fantastic. So I also felt a little bad for him. He backs away and I'm like, do you just spend all your time in that little canyon, the Watcher? I mean, that's a horrible life for you. I mean, you don't even have a place to sit down, anywhere to take a little bit of a break. I mean, I guess he's not sitting. He's like at a standing desk. But still, I thought that was sad. So anyway, Ultron's looking through and he's like, oh, multiverses. He doesn't quite see the Watcher, but he's like, oh, there's even more places for me to destroy. So there's no Marvel comics whatsoever. And the Watcher is like, what am I going to do? Well, I have to intervene. And you can see another shot of his home. It looks very bleak. Or like the Fortress of Solitude, I guess. And then he said, there's still hope. And I was like, if you bring out Hope Van Dyne again and do another play on that word, I'm going to get really upset. But thankfully they did not. So anyway, they have another movie reference with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's very on point. But it's too many movie references. Not all the characters have to be pop culture encyclopedias. But I much prefer this exchange where Natasha explains we liked hard copies in Russia because they're harder to steal and they're easier to destroy. And she said digital stuff is very sloppy and leads to situations like right now. That's what I added on there. So I love that they actually had to go through everything analog style, through box by box. I thought that was fantastic. And then they have this great moment where she finds Red Guardian's shield. And really, Lake Bell did this perfectly. And she's like, hey, Clint. And then he turns around and she's like, is this my color? And he's not laughing, though. He's like, I'm losing the will to live. So don't feel bad when I sacrifice myself in about 10 minutes. And we're like, okay. So he's looking through stuff. And I can't believe what a bad job he's doing. And apparently he doesn't even know what he's looking for. If she had an idea of what they were looking for, why didn't she tell him? He could have gone past it, ages ago. But I thought Jeffrey Wright was very funny here, being like, it's right there. And he's like, should I intervene? And I have to say, with the Eternals and with this character, you're like, you guys are really going overboard with this not intervening stuff. And like Hawkeye even quits. He's like, I can't do it anymore. And the Watcher's like, it's right there. But luckily, Natasha's like, let me see that box. Don't quit, Clint. And it's there. She knew what they were looking for, Armin Zola. And again, didn't say anything. But Clint's like, that was at least my box. The Watcher's super happy. He's like, oh man, everything's going to be great. But it might be that they're too late because Ultron has found him. And so they start to fight it out. And then we go to the base, which is from Civil War, right? So they find here, they meet a different S.H.I.E.L.D. person. And that's, Zemo wasn't a S.H.I.E.L.D. person, but, a different, villain who actually becomes kind of an anti-hero yet again. But this time it's Zola. Toby Jones came back. And so I like the use of light with the green on their faces. I thought that was really well done. And so they say, you're going to help us. And I do like some of the dialogue here, too. I thought it was funny when Zola was like, why would my goals align with yours? And Clint says, because I'm going to pour water on your drive if you don't do it. And you're the last copy of yourself to date. I also, Natasha referenced that she'd met a copy of him. They could be lying. Maybe there would be other copies. It's weird. I never thought Zola's existence seemed very good because someone has to boot him up. I don't know. But he's about to get an upgrade. So Natasha calls Avengers Tower and wants to order a pizza. I wonder if that's like a Die Hard reference, right? Like, lady, I'm not ordering a pizza. So she said, I'd like to order a pizza. And she says, do you have any gluten-free crust? And she says, okay, they'll be here like in 2 minutes. So they upload. I don't know. It's funny that in movies this is how it always works. Like, this would work to upload him to the Arrow by plugging it in. But if you just jam a projectile into a machine, I don't know why that you would instantly think it would upload, but it's funny. They always do that in movies. You'd have to, in real life, find this thing's upload drive, and I don't think they have them readily accessible. I like the way they were moving. Some of them are crawling, some of them are walking, some of them are flying, and it also reminded me of that cool sequence in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom when the dinosaurs coming through with the fire and stuff. I thought that was great, too. So they shoot the first one right in the eye. Clint has very good aim because he's Hawkeye, naturally, and it starts to upload. So Natasha uses that shield real well. That's great. I have as much fun seeing her use that shield as I see Captain America using Mjolnir. All right, so I love this, that they have to, just like rescuing somebody, they have to pull this drone back while it's uploading. And I thought that was really cool. So Clint's giving them air cover with one of the coolest arrows in his arsenal. I love this net, although he has an even cooler one coming up. So they lock themselves in here, and those robots are trying to break through, but I love that Zola sat up as the droid, and now that he's green, he's controlling that one, and this was even cooler. So he stands up, and Natasha opens fire and takes out his knees. Oh my God, this is the kind of, gray area stuff that, the Avengers wouldn't do, but Nick Fury has Natasha and Clint doing all the time. I thought that was fantastic. And it makes perfect sense. Sure, maybe he'd just run away. So it was a very good idea. Pull the arrow out of his eye, and he's like, okay, I'm uploading. Look at them. They look so great in the back of that. But then these guys break through and they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. And he's unable to stop them. He's not able to breach the hive mind of Ultron. So they make their way up the same cylinder, which they did in Civil War. And I think it's interesting that Natasha is strong enough to carry Ultron on her back. That must be very light alloy. So that's a great shot too. Natasha looks so great here. So she opens fire just like she did in a first Avengers movie, allowing Clint to do an amazing dive and shoot these things around the perimeter, which create another barrier. And I thought that was just, these arrows are just so fantastic. He's come a long way from the SNL sketch, which I thought was very funny, where he said, I'd like to go back to the Quinjet, I've run out of arrows. I thought that was great. So they're stuck there for at least a little bit, and he falls though. And, basically he's Zemo, but Zola returns fire, proving that he's like at least someone on their side. And then they do the reverse of the endgame death. So you had to enjoy the poeticness of that. And he has no longer a family to live for. So he says, let me make this sacrifice. And I appreciate that Natasha didn't just watch him go and be like, it's so sad. She didn't let him die in vain. She makes a run for it because that's the whole reason he's doing it, so they can escape. And they have this very nice shot of him, with taking an explosive arrow and taking them all out. He could have just shot the explosive arrow, quite frankly. I don't know why he had to go down with it. Couldn't he have just swung to a lower thing? Whatever. All right, his sacrifice, very noble. So it explodes, and they get pushed out the top, and I love that she lands. She does the Captain America land. I'm like, very nice, Natasha. And, she's like basically, certainly the only superhero left in this universe, and I feel very bad for her. I think she's about to make some new friends, though, and she gets recruited along with, Agent Captain Carter for the final episode. Let's see. I hope so. It would be great. Scarlett Johansson should come into Kevin Feige's office and say, I want this. I want to come back in the multiverse as this version of Black Widow. So anyway, Zola explains, she's like, what happened? Did you double cross us? And he goes, no, Ultron is nowhere in the known universe. He's in the multiverse, but I don't know about the multiverse just yet. They're confused. But then we go in between the multiverses and we see the Watcher fighting Ultron. And I have to say, I get a big kick out of watching the Watcher fight. Watching the Watcher fight, because he has such an adorable big head. It's real cute. So, but he's pretty formidable. So they're fighting, and Ultron says, "Infinity powers activate!" And and the Watcher thinks he has the upper hand, but then Vision just pops up behind him, and he goes, "In the multiverse, anything is possible." And you're like, you just have too many lives, Ultron. As I said, he's a little bit of a difficult villain to have. So he smacks the Watcher in the face and he breaks through. Now this is interesting. I like the way they broke through multiverses because this is the effect that you're going to see with America Chavez, who's coming up in Doctor Strange 2. Although when sometimes she kind of has like a cracking effect, but she creates star shapes. I'm very excited to see how it looks because it looks good here and in movement. So I can't wait to see what they do with it in the film. So he gets him to another planet, and they fight here some more. And he's like, "I'm going to do more than just watch." And again, the Watcher is able to hold his own, powers up. He too goes through a transformation, and he looks cute. He looks a little bit actually. Also, his armor reminds me, especially with the big head, of Kang. So he's like, "Let's go, let's do it. You want to do this?" And they start crashing through multiverses, and I thought that was a really cool effect. And then Ultron even goes all Galactus. I was like, what? That makes no sense in the terms of this fight. But it was a cool reference to see. So then the Watcher gets shatters through to another place where there's a Times Square. And everyone's taking his picture. And look, Steve is being sworn in as president. I thought that was a great touch. And Ultron, he doesn't care because he doesn't care. He's not sticking around any of these places too long. And with each punch, they change the environment and the bystanders. So they're in Wakanda, then they have like medieval, then there's Skrulls. I thought that was all really cool. And then they land in a snowy multiverse, and Ultron just wants to end this. So he almost cracks the Watcher's head, just like Carol almost cracked his head, but the Watcher makes a fist like Crispin Glover in Back to the Future, and he says, "No, Biff," and he punches, although here Ultron doesn't get passed out, and the Watcher has to run for it. And, Ultron's like, go ahead and run. Watch me wreak havoc on the multiverses. And you're like, man, this seems like there's no hope. And it does seem pretty bad. Although, look where the Watcher went. He's been watching a lot of stuff, and he's the biggest person, I guess it takes one bad, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. So he's like, I know someone else who I thought was pretty bad, but, maybe he's the only one who can take you on, and that's Doctor Strange Supreme. And I love our introduction is him with all the demons, like, swirling around like a chimera. And then you see him coming and you see his third eye. He looks reptilian. You're like, man, what'd you do to yourself? But he comes out and he's like, what? I'm just sweet Benny C. who just hasn't gotten enough sleep. And then, although he says, I want to hear you say it. And if someone looks at you like that, do not trust them. But I think the Watcher has no choice. And he says, I need your help. And we're like, yeah, next week, the final season finale should be pretty phenomenal. I'm very, very excited to see it. All right, so what did you think of this episode? What do you think of Ultron as a villain? Did it matter to you that James Spader didn't come back? And what are your hopes for the season finale? Thanks for going over this with me. Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.